Welcome to the After Show. I'm Mike Graham. We've just finished 2 glorious hours of the Mike Graham Show, the breakfast show, of course, which runs from 7 until 9 every single weekday morning. Do go to the YouTube channel, the Mike Graham Show, and like it and subscribe to it, please. The After Show, though, is where we are now. And this is going to happen after 9 o'clock every single day with somebody fascinating, somebody interesting, somebody with expertise, somebody with common sense, and somebody with a speciality to tell you all about. And this morning, I'm delighted to say Andrew Montford joins us from Net Zero Watch. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
As we sit shivering in the freezing cold and we watch the electricity meter going round and round and round like crazy, and our gas consumption going through the roof, and wood-burning stoves using up all sorts of energy, we can turn our minds to how much money we're going to be spending on heating our own homes, on all the various different kinds of energy that the government are trying to get us into. Ed Miliband has returned to Westminster this week for the first time in 2026. What's he up to?
Well, Ed Miliband is trying to keep the net zero bandwagon on the road, is probably the best way of putting it. I think there's a lot of people, even in the Labour Party, are now starting to get a little bit nervous about the net zero agenda. They can see that they're terribly unpopular, that the cost of energy bills is preying on voters' minds. And of course, Ed Miliband just doesn't want to deal with that, so he's trying to spin his way out of trouble. So Ed was standing up in Parliament yesterday, and he was talking about what he's done for electricity bills, and he said he's reduced the cost of electricity. Now, that's not really true. What he's done is to move some of the cost of electricity from bills to the general taxation. So essentially, he's hidden the cost rather than actually reducing it. And this is the problem we face. People are not, the politicians for years have been trying to hide the problems rather than actually dealing with them. Electricity is just too expensive. The system is too inefficient, and we need to deal with that.
Well, exactly right, because ever since they've been in this Labour government, and this will be their sort of, second anniversary, I guess, coming up in July, on July the 4th, they've been telling us ever since they got in that they're going to be saving us money on our energy bills. Before they got in, they promised £300 cheaper energy. That sort of unravelled pretty quickly, and it became clear that it was maybe something like 300 quid, but it wasn't necessarily over the course of 1 year. It might be over the course of several years. They're now spinning that they're going to make us all £150 better off because they're going to give us some kind of energy rebate. But as it's been pointed out by others, the price cap for energy has gone up since they made that promise. And so even if you take 150 quid off, we'll still be paying more for our energy anyway.
Yeah, the price cap now is well, by the time this £150 has come through, which is going to be in April, the price cap is still going to be £100 or so above where it was when Ed Miliband came into power. The other thing that we have to remember is that this is only a short-term adjustment. Essentially, it's going to last for 2 years. So in some ways, what Miliband is doing is playing a silly childish political game because he's setting up a poison pill for whoever gets into power in 2029, because 6 months before they get into power, bills will have shot up by £150 and there will be another energy price crisis. So, this is the thing where we need to keep hammering Miliband and say, you need to actually stop playing student politics and start trying to fix the system. And that's something that Miliband, I think, is just too obsessive to want to do.
Well, he does seem to struggle, doesn't he, when he's asked specific questions. That famously, when he was on Sky TV and he was trying to explain why we didn't somehow have any control over the gas price, when even the presenter from Sky was actually able to explain to him that the gas prices have actually come down wholesale. And it was one of the most ridiculous and bizarre interviews I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, the gas prices did it to us line is what Ed Miliband is holding on to for dear life, because it's really his only way of trying to justify continuing along the mad path he's taking us down. It is now clear that gas prices are back where they were back in 2018, 2019. In real terms, they may even be slightly below where they were in 2018, 2019. And, they've been stable now for 18 months, if not falling slightly. The futures markets are actually expecting gas prices to fall further over the next couple of years. So,
Right.
it's not gas prices that's causing the problem. It's the cost of renewables. And this time of year, we start to get, some quite interesting figures coming out. There's a big story in the Telegraph today about how much we're paying wind farms to switch off.
Yeah.
That cost, back if you go back to sort of 10, 15 years ago, that was a few hundred million a year. I mean, nothing at all really
Yeah.
in grid terms. We're now up to 2.5 billion. I'm expecting by the middle of next year that the 12-month rolling total will be more like getting close to 3 billion, and we're expecting by 2030 for that to be 8 billion. Now, 8 billion pounds a year. If you think about what that means in terms of the cost of living, that's another 250 pounds per household. This simply can't go on. Households are screaming already. Businesses are already screaming as well because they can't afford their energy bills. And what Miliband is doing is just going to put them up, not just a bit, but a lot. It simply has to
So I just
stop.
messaged you on the phone. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, the story says Scotland's biggest offshore wind farm wasted 3/4 of the energy it produced last year after being paid to switch off its turbines. And this is the Sea Green wind farm off of Scotland's east coast, squandering vast amounts of its power because there isn't enough grid capacity to transport it to areas of the country where it's needed. So, I
I
mean, the
know.
whole sort of premise of the wind farms in the North Sea is insane, isn't it?
Yeah, well, okay. So here's an interesting story. So back sort of more than 10 years ago, we used to not let anything connect to the grid until the grid was ready to take the power that it was going to produce. But then in 2008, 2009, along came a Secretary of State for Energy who was rather obsessed with wind power. His name was Ed Miliband. And he said, we're going to change this system. And what we're going to do is let people connect to the grid. If we can't take the power, we'll compensate them. We'll pay them to switch off, and everything will be hunky dory. And we can see that that was simply an insane thing to do, and consumers are paying the cost for it. So
Yeah.
Ed Miliband is to blame for this shambles. It was his idea. He signed off on it. So he has to take the blame. And so we shouldn't be letting him get away with this. It's his fault. But it's not just paying the wind farms to switch off, and it's subsidies as well. The subsidies are going to go through the roof. We're expecting the results of the next big renewables auction in a week or so. Now, if Miliband gets his way, that's going to put subsidies through the roof. It's going to put we're going to be paying a lot of wind farms to switch off because there's a lot of wind farms coming in Scottish waters. Again, it's the Scottish wind farms that are generally paid to switch off. We're going to be paying more to try to keep the gas-fired power stations there so that we have electricity when the wind isn't blowing. The whole thing is a complete disaster, and I think what we're seeing now is that there is a growing realization amongst from Labour MPs that something is going to have to give here. We simply cannot allow industry to close down, which is what we're doing at the moment. I mean, we've lost 2 of our 6 oil refineries
Yeah.
in the last 12 months. I mean, this is an insane level of deindustrialization. And Ed Miliband's just shrugging his shoulders and saying it'll be fine. We'll create some green jobs. It's madness.
It is madness. Yeah, I mean, Claire Coutinho, the Shadow Energy Secretary, is basically saying that we're spending £1 billion right now switching wind farms off, but by 2030, it'll be 8 billion.
That's right. I mean, it is absolutely insane. I mean, in a sane world, what you'd be doing. I mean, I suppose if Ed Miliband wanted to do what he wants to do in a sane way, he'd say, okay, no more wind farms in Scottish waters until we've got the capacity to get the power down to the south of England, where the markets are. I mean, a truly sane policy would just be to reverse the net zero policy completely. But yeah, this is going on and on. As I say, there's a huge wind farm called Berwick Bank that's planned for the Firth of Forth. That's going to have exactly the same problem, and it will be switched off all the time. So yeah, we need politicians really to hammer Ed Miliband on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly Richard Tice is doing that from Reform, as is Claire Coutinho. But I mean, even the company, the Scottish company or the British company, SSE, which owns 49% of this particular offshore wind farm, is in cahoots with a French oil giant called Total Energies and PTT Exploration and Production from Thailand. So it's not even as if we're getting all the benefits of whatever it is that's going on in terms of how much money they're making.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about these constraint payments is that they can actually earn more money being paid to switch off than they can actually generating electricity. And this is one of the reasons why Ed Miliband's decision to allow them to connect to the grid before the grid was ready was so insane. Because what we suspect is happening is that wind farms are deliberately siting themselves in places where they know the grid won't be able to take the power, so that they can earn essentially a bonus by being switched off. I mean, this is the utter insanity of the electricity system today. So yeah, we need things to change in quite a big way. We should perhaps talk about what might need to happen, because there are some very big decisions needing to be taken by the politicians. Essentially, the only way back to cheap electricity, and if we want to reindustrialize, and in the sort of geopolitically unstable world into which we seem to be going, that is absolutely vital. We must reindustrialize, and we need cheap power. So the only way to get cheap power again is actually to not pay for all these wind farms that have been built. Now, the wind farms have all got contracts which protect them and say, if you change the law in any way that's adverse to our interests, we get compensation. So the contracts that the government has written with these wind farms are a national disgrace. I mean, the civil servants and the politicians who have done this to us, and it's Conservatives and it's Liberal Democrats and it's Labour, they've all been in cahoots on this. They absolutely need to be hung, drawn, and quartered, metaphorically, because we are in dire straits on this. So we need to essentially renege on those contracts. That is the only way we're going to get back to cheap electricity. Now, Parliament can do that. Parliament can say, okay, those contracts are null and void. It's been done before, in the aftermath of the Second World War. We reneged on contracts. We reneged on contracts during the Second World War. But it's a pretty major step. It's a pretty hard thing for a politician to go to the public and say, we're going to start reneging on commercial contracts. And even if they do that, then the wind farms can still sue them in international tribunals, because we're also signed up to something called the Energy Charter Treaty, which essentially prevents us from knackering, energy investments that have already been built. So it's going to be an absolute shambles. But the alternative is a disaster. It was interesting, Mike. I noticed you said on social media yesterday you were talking about the renewables disaster, and that isn't hyperbole. That is the right term to use. It is a disaster, because if we don't do this, Mike, we're going to have high electricity prices, and by high I mean above the level they are today, into the 2040s. We won't get back to where we want to be, which is electricity at sort of 15 pence a kilowatt hour as it was in the early 2000s, we won't be back there until 2050s or 2060s. So essentially, you and I will never see cheap electricity again. And our children will probably never see cheap electricity. It's that disastrous what our politicians have done to us.
Yes. And the other worrying aspect of what Ed Miliband would like to see happen is that he wants more electricity production because he's getting more and more sort of green, if you like. And they're also talking about setting up all these data centers, which are going to, absolutely, wreck the national grid. They're going to be sucking out loads and loads of power from the main systems. We're already hearing people like Chris Whitty in the last week or so talking about what to do in the event of a blackout, or what we used to see when I lived in New York, brownouts, where a specific part of the country suddenly just doesn't have electricity for a while. And they can't generate enough of it. And the more that they want to have us driving electric cars, the more that they want to move over to renewables, the more that they want these data centers, the demand for the electricity is going to go up massively as well, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting. Is demand going to go up? I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, that is the plan, that we're going to be using a lot more electricity. But it's also quite possible that because prices are so high, we're going to lose a lot of industry. And it's not just sort of manufacturing, but also things like the entertainment industry and hospitality, that they will collapse. The demand will disappear, and then the costs of the grid essentially have to be shared over a smaller number of kilowatt hours, and therefore the price has to go up. So we sort of get into a bit of a death spiral. Prices go up, demand goes down, so prices have to go up higher. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is, though, that demand does increase. That Ed Miliband, his subsidies for electric cars or whatever, and heat pumps increases demand. And then, yes, obviously there's new demand in theory coming from AI, although whether anybody will build AI in this country is an interesting question because electricity is so expensive. I think in reality, your data centers will actually have their own sort of dedicated private power stations because that's the only way they can guarantee it. Because the other problem you alluded to, which was the possibility of blackouts, is real and looming. We have a sort of an aging fleet of gas-fired power stations that we rely on to keep the lights on when the wind isn't blowing and the sun is shining. And a lot of them are going to have to close down in the next 5 years, as is a large proportion of our nuclear power stations. Now, the problem is with that, if you want to replace the gas-fired power stations, well, firstly, the people who own them don't want to replace them because they're going, well, look, we hardly get to run at all now, so why would we want to invest in building a new one? And well, you might get around that problem by throwing large amounts of subsidy at them, and we're going to find out in the next month or so whether that has worked and whether that produces any new capacity. But there is a real risk that we just don't have enough power to keep the lights on. There is, I think, from sort of 28 to 29, there is a real problem. The other problem with gas-fired power stations is that there's a long lead time for them at the moment because everybody around the world wants data centers so that they can do AI. The lead time for a gas-fired power station is 8 years. If you place an order now, you might get it built in 8 years' time. Now, in the UK, it's probably more like 10 years because, getting through planning and environmental permitting takes an age as well. So the chances of us actually having the power we need in 2030 is actually now looking quite small. There is a real risk of blackouts. As we saw in Spain, when they had, remember they had a blackout in the first half of 2025. It lasted about 18 hours. The whole of the country blacked out. Portugal was blacked out, and quite a lot of southern France was blacked out. Now, when that happened, 11 people died. So this is pretty serious stuff. And I think once you get past 24 hours, once you're into a second day, it's getting much more serious because when you have no power, it's not just that the lights aren't on. It's
Right.
that your water treatment works have no power. And so dirty water then leads to disease. Your food supply chains
Yeah.
start failing. You start having to throw food away, and then you're looking at significant death tolls. And the fact that the politicians don't seem to be taking this risk at all seriously is very worrying indeed.
Mm.
We've been aware of this problem for years now. I mean, it's not just Miliband. The Conservatives should have been doing something about this, but the whole machine is geared towards decarbonisation
Yeah.
and a risk that is one, hypothetical, and two, decades in the future, rather than the problem that is real and looming and could be catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Boris Johnson was totally obsessed with the green agenda, wasn't he? For one reason or another. But let's have a quick look at how Ed Miliband is behaving, because he was in the chamber, as we said yesterday. Lee Anderson from the Reform Party had some questions for him. Check this out.
Lee Anderson.
Speaker, in November last year, the Energy Secretary and his entourage attended COP30 in Brazil. This was an event where a rainforest was chopped down so the Energy Secretary could talk about saving rainforests. Does he understand the hypocrisy of it all?
So stay.
I don't understand the honourable gentleman, if I'm honest. I mean, look, basically, the truth is he would give up on young people. He would sell them down the river. He'd sell down the river today's generations, future generations, and all the generations to come. I don't think that's a very good platform to stand on.
Yes. So again, doesn't answer the question, doesn't see the irony in the fact that he and probably a couple of hundred delegates from this country went to COP30, where nothing was really decided, where nothing was sorted out, where no policy emerged, and from which no safeguards from what you've just been describing have been worked out.
No, that's right. The exchanges in Parliament now are almost a complete waste of time, aren't they? Because the Labour government has clearly taken a corporate decision that they're just not going to answer any questions whatsoever. Right. There was another exchange in Parliament yesterday when a Conservative MP asked one of the junior energy ministers just the very simple question, what is the gas price today? And we just got this spiel about taxes on oil rigs or something, and just complete failure to address the question. And the Speaker lets them get away with it. I mean, the Speaker really should be insisting on questions being answered, or the Speaker, I think, has powers to actually sort of reprimand people who misbehave, and not answering questions is misbehaving. I mean, it's a farce, really. This is the problem with Westminster, with the Parliament. It's now very much a charade. I mean, I look at select committee hearings quite often, and it's clearly it's a nonsense. Nobody asks any questions. I mean, the politicians are asking the questions that the staff on the committee tell them to ask, and the people answering the questions are all carefully selected so that they won't sort of address, they won't say anything difficult. It's very unusual that you see anybody at one of these select committees who might say something difficult for the government. And this is what has to change. I think it's sort of a broader question, isn't it, than just energy? It's the whole thing about putting our democracy back where it should be.
Well, it's about accountability, it's about responsibility, transparency, all the things they said they were going to be, but of course, none of which they have been. Once again, the only thing we can be sure about is that Ed Miliband is addicted to tax, he's addicted to green energy. He wants to charge people more money if they've got a gas boiler, to subsidise those people that have heat pumps. He can't rule that out because it's impossible for him to do so. And so whatever he says, we can be pretty sure, by the sounds of what you're saying, Andrew, that our electricity prices will go up this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think bills, will be, because of this £150 that he's put onto general taxation, your bill will look a bit lower throughout 2026. I think by the end of the year, we will start to see prices on the rise again, as you know, we'll get more wind farms coming on stream, and that will, you know, increase subsidy costs, and you know, paying wind farms to paying some of them to switch off and that sort of thing. So prices will start to rise again then, and they'll essentially keep running, you know, keep rising for as long as we continue on this policy trajectory. So, you know, the thing that has to happen is that we have to have a complete reversal of the net zero policy. We have to simply stop building wind farms. Now, you said that Richard Tice has you know, been bashing away at this, and he has done good work, and he's sort of said he's going to rip up wind farm contracts if any new ones are signed. That's a very important step. We will find out next week, I think it is, whether that's been successful, whether he has killed that renewables subsidy auction. If he has, he's saved consumers billions and billions of pounds every year for 20, 30 years. So, you know, fingers crossed that he has been successful there.
Fingers crossed indeed. And finally, what of our good friend Jürgen Meyer from Great British Energy? You know, that completely ridiculous white elephant of an organisation which exists seemingly to give jobs for the boys and girls. Included in the directors is Frances O'Grady, who was General Secretary of TUC. She's apparently got some non-executive director's role. Frank Mitchell, who was working for Development Scotland. Kate Gilmartin, who came from British Hydropower Association. I mean, the list goes on and on. All these people taking money out of the public purse. Jürgen Meyer, who doesn't appear to have any kind of job at all, and Great British Energy, which doesn't appear to do anything at all, apart from just funnel money into private companies so they can get even richer.
Yeah, I mean, Great British Energy is an absolute shambles, really. It's putting money into things that nobody would put their own money into.
Right.
I mean, you know, things like, you know, floating offshore wind. I mean, this is just an insane technology. It's the most expensive form of electricity generation that's ever been deployed. You know, there are a couple of sort of pilot plants up in Scotland which have been utterly disastrous. And to say that, oh well, you know, okay, they've been disastrous, so we'll do some more of them. I mean, what sort of you know, madman does that kind of thing? But yeah, that's Ed Miliband for you. So yeah, Great British Energy is you know, an easy win for whoever gets into government next, because they can just close the damn thing down and save everybody a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely right. Brilliant. Andrew, great to talk to you. Great to see you. If only the government had somebody as sensible as you running the energy department, we might all be a lot better off. Andrew Montford, Director of Net Zero Watch. Great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you again soon. That was the after show, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have another one for you tomorrow. Fascinating stuff about the state of our energy sector, run by crazy Ed Miliband, who literally gets more crazy by the day. And God knows what he's going to be like this time next week. But we shall see. We'll keep an eye on him. We'll keep an eye on you. And just remember this, go to the YouTube channel. Please like it. Please subscribe to it. This will stay as an exclusive onto Substack for a couple of days. And then after that, it will be on general release on YouTube as well. And just remember this, whatever you do, no matter how much of it there is out there, do not be a plank.